Okay, everybody, welcome back to another Twitch session here. As you all know from yesterday, I was doing the demonstration of creating our server, and everything was going really well until we got to the Favicon part. And the Favicon wouldn't load and jumped around a bunch of different places to try to figure out what was going on with our Favicon. In the end, we just admitted defeat, and we were defeated by the Favicon. So I don't like being defeated by anything, much less a Favicon. So I went and thought about my code a little bit, and this morning while I was working on a video project, it all of a sudden occurred to me what I was doing wrong. So I want to quickly take a look at that here real quick. So you'll see that in our server that we had created, we were reading the file and specifying the encoding type. Now, the reason why we were specifying the encoding type was because typically when you read a file off of disk, you want to specify the encoding so that you can then just start using the content. You don't have to do some type of transformation of that content and encode it to something else or what have you. Well, the problem is because I said UTF-8, all of our text content loaded fine, but our actual image content is not UTF-8, and that was what was causing our problem in terms of getting that Favicon to load. So what we're going to do is first I'm going to run this on localhost 3000, which I've already done, but let me restart that for people. Just from the JS demo folder, I'm saying npm start, and that's running the server. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back over to Chrome, and I'm going to go to localhost 3000. And you'll notice when this loads up, we don't have our Favicon here. We have this globe-looking thing. And so we want to fix that and actually get the Favicon. So the way we're going to do that is I'm going to stop the server first. Then I'm going to come into here and remove the encoding. There we go. So the encoding is now removed. So now we're not going to be specifying that encoding when we read the content. Now if I come back in here and start this, come back over here and reload. And now you can see there's the little T for D Favicon showing up there in the tab. Now let's open up our terminal window here real quick. You'll see everything loaded up here just fine in terms of the hello world and everything else. Now, I ran this also in Firefox, and Firefox loaded everything else up just fine, but it did complain saying, hey, make sure you specify your char set. And especially since we're going to be sending down this just as raw data that we've loaded off the disk, probably a good idea to specify the char set here. So I'll just say UTF-8 for our meta tag there. And you should do that anyways, regardless of what web server you're on, whatever. Always specify your char set as part of your HTML. And I'd recommend always testing your stuff in multiple browsers because different browsers will tend to key in on different things that they might recommend for you fixing on your actual web page. Now, the next little change I want to make here real quick is that I had dropped my Favicon icon file into the images folder. And really, I don't want that there. That really needs to sit out here in the top level WW folder. And that's because that's the default place that legacy browsers are going to go to look for the icon. The images that I have here are the ones that we are in fact using, and they are set up through the link tags that you see here. But just in case you get loaded up onto an old web browser that automatically searches for the Favicon off of the root folder, make sure you have that icon folder there, or icon file like we did. Make sure you have that icon file like we do here. So with that taken care of and our Favicon working, we can now declare victory and keep moving forward. What I want to do is I want to enhance our web server here a little bit more this morning. Right now we are using a callback based approach to managing our asynchronous operations. And what I'd like to actually do is change this to be more of an actual promise based approach. So when Node was first created, all of the asynchronous stuff was managed via callback. But then later on with ES 2015 and promises becoming a part of JavaScript, it became possible to basically promisify your various Node APIs, either through writing your own custom promise wrappers or using the promisify function provided by utils. But one of the things that's been added here in the last several releases of Node is the ability to actually just pull in a promises enabled version of the file system module. So you can say .promises. This will give you a promise enabled version. So down here where we have our read file, instead of having to use this callback mechanism, I can now switch this over to being promise based. So I can come in and close that off, and then I can do my .then, and then I can do my .catch, and I can set up my code this way. So this would be the actual data that's being received in the .then. This would be the error code here. And then what I can do is simply move my error handling code into the .catch. There we go. And I can move my code for handling the data into here. And then, of course, clean up the code that you see down here like that. And now I can have a more promise-based approach to doing this. Now, generally, you would be wanting to do something in terms of like returning back this read file promise, what have you. But that's not really something we need to really worry about in this particular case. We're just going to use this to structure our successful path and our error handling in a little bit more convenient, easier to read way. Especially if we had additional asynchronous operations we wanted to perform. This would be a great way to chain those into this. So let's go ahead and verify that our code here is going to work. Looks like we have a little bit of an error down here. And so I think that's because we need to get rid of that right there. Cool. So now we've got our promise version of read file. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to stop the server and restart it. And let's go ahead and run it. And let's see if we get back our data as expected. Now remember, all of this that we're doing is all live. I did work through mentally the process of how to fix the Favicon ahead of time. But all this other stuff is all live. We're just coding it. We're going to run it. We're going to see if it works. And if it doesn't, then we're going to fix it. So we'll come into here. We'll reload our page. There we go. And boom, we have our hello world. So now we've started to incorporate the concept of doing asynchronous programming using promises. Now we can actually take this to the next level if we want, and we could set this up using async and await. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decorate this with async at the front, and then instead of doing this whole chaining of the .then and the catch and all of that, I can actually do this with a little bit easier to read syntax for those who are not familiar or comfortable with working with promises. So I'm going to throw in a try catch block here. If you know from the past, try catches don't really work with callback functions and everything, but you can use a standard try catch when you use async and await. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to set this up to say fs read file, and we're going to say const data equal to await fs read file. And then we can then take our code like this and paste it in like that. And then, of course, if we have an error, we can set up our code to work like this. Now, I'm not going to delete this promise code. I'll just comment this out, and we'll just leave that like that as our promise example. There we go. And then here we've got our data await fs read file that will write out our content and write out our data. And then if we happen to have an error, then we'll actually log that out right here. So we'll go ahead and save that. And I think we're good otherwise. So let's open back up our terminal. Let's go ahead and stop this and start it back up. And then let's come back over to our web browser and reload, and we should get hello world, which we do. Excellent. Now, this is not blocking code. A lot of times people will see async and await for the first time, and they'll think the await is actually blocking the thread while it's being read off of the file system. That is not the case. Async and await is really a powerful combination of promises and generators. And the idea with a generator is that you run a generator function, and halfway through executing the function, the generator function returns control back to the caller. And then the caller can do something else. Well, what's happening here is that we're returning control back to the caller while the promise is being resolved to actually read the file. And then once that promise is resolved, then the code here starts executing again where it left off with the await. So async and await is not blocking anything. It is true asynchronous code. It just allows you to write your code in a format that makes a little bit more sense. So we have our promise example, our async and await example. And let me do one more thing here. I'm actually going to just kind of come back here, and I'm going to convert this back so we can also have a nice callback example. There we go. Okay, and we'll just I'm just going to copy this code right here. There we go. And come into here, and I'm going to uncomment it for a moment just so I can edit the code with some actual code highlighting. We'll say error and data. We'll put back our original function. And here, we'll just say if error, then paste that. By the way, one of the skills I recommend that you develop as a JavaScript developer is the ability to easily convert between these different styles of managing asynchronous operations. You never know when you'll be working with legacy code, or maybe a team has a particular preference for how this stuff is structured. And so converting it back and forth between callbacks and promises, and then ultimately async and await is a really good skill to basically develop to be able to do that. Okay, cool. So now that we have this set up here, you've got these different examples of wiring all this up for managing the asynchronous operations. If you'd like a copy of this code, I'd be more than happy to send it to you. But to get a copy of the code, you have to do me a favor. I have a website. Now, this website is not the world's best website at all. We actually have a new website that we're having created because I am not a designer. But this website has the ability for you to be able to register with us to join something called T4D.io Insiders. And what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to connect with other developers who are interested in learning more about JavaScript and programming and stuff like that, and being able to send out actual content to you through our mailing list. I promise no spamming or anything like that. But if you would like a copy of this code, sign up on our mailing list here, and we'd be more than happy to send you a copy of the code. We also have some other special offer codes and stuff that we'll send you. You can sign up on the little annoying pop-up form if you want to, but you can also scroll down to the bottom and you can sign up down here, and then we'll get back to you. And I promise you, we're not going to be spamming you. We're just trying to reach out to people to kind of form a community of developers where we can share ideas and do coding and stuff like that together. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video here. Make sure you send us your contact information if you'd like a copy of this code, and we'll be sure to do more live streaming events here in the future. Thank you.